The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple. The twilight sky was a canvas of vibrant colors, a beautiful yet fleeting moment that marked the end of the day and the beginning of night. As the last rays of sunlight disappeared, the world seemed to hold its breath, waiting for the darkness to take over. A tired group of travelers, weary from their journey, stumbled upon the quaint town of Silent Hollow. Their steps were heavy, their faces marked by the exhaustion of a long day's travel. They had been on the road for what felt like an eternity, and the sight of the town brought a glimmer of hope to their tired eyes. It seemed like any other sleepy town, nestled amidst rolling hills. The landscape was serene, almost picturesque, with quaint houses and narrow cobblestone streets. The town exuded a sense of calm, a stark contrast to the travelers' weariness. The air, though, carried a chill that sent shivers down their spines. It was an unusual cold, one that seemed to seep into their bones, making them pull their cloaks tighter around themselves. The eerie atmosphere of the quiet town only added to their discomfort. A sense of unease settled upon them as they entered the town square. The square was eerily empty, the usual hustle and bustle of a town at dusk conspicuously absent. Shadows danced in the dim light, creating an unsettling ambiance that made the travelers' hearts race. The travelers decided to stop for the night, hoping to resume their journey at daybreak. They needed rest, and despite the unease that gnawed at them, they had little choice but to stay. They began to look for a place to spend the night, their eyes scanning the town for any sign of lodging. They found a local inn, its sign creaking softly in the evening breeze. The inn looked old but welcoming, a beacon of warmth in the cold night. The sign, though weathered, promised shelter and rest, and the travelers eagerly approached. The innkeeper, a man with eyes that seemed to hold ancient secrets, greeted them with a forced smile. His demeanor was polite, yet there was something unsettling about him. His eyes, dark and piercing, seemed to see right through them, as if he knew more about them than he let on. As they settled into their rooms, the travelers couldn't shake off the feeling of being watched, of being unwelcome guests in Silent Hollow. The walls seemed to whisper secrets, and the shadows in the corners of their rooms felt alive. They tried to rest, but sleep was elusive, their minds plagued by the strange aura of the town. As twilight deepened, the town took on an eerie quality. Shadows grew longer, stretching from every corner and alleyway. The once welcoming lights of the inn flickered ominously, casting dancing shadows on the walls. The laughter and chatter of the townsfolk, which had been sparse to begin with, ceased completely. A strange quiet descended upon Silent Hollow. The wind, now a low moan, seemed to carry whispers. The travelers gathered in the common room, each trying to mask their growing fear. They spoke in hushed tones, sharing the unsettling feeling that something was amiss. Outside, the wind howled. Darkness fell like a shroud, swallowing the last vestiges of daylight. With the darkness came a silence so profound it was as if the world itself had stopped breathing. The travelers, now gripped by a primal fear, huddled closer. One by one, the remaining lights in the inn sputtered and died, plunging them into absolute darkness. Panic seized them. They stumbled towards the door, desperate to escape the suffocating darkness. But when they threw open the doors, their cries died in their throats. The town of Silent Hollow, every building, every cobblestone street had vanished. They stood in a void, an expanse of nothingness that stretched endlessly in every direction. There was no sky above, no ground below, only a chilling, all-encompassing darkness. The travelers, their faces pale with terror, huddled together, their breaths shallow gasps in the silence. Then a faint light flickered in the distance. As they approached, hearts pounding with a mixture of fear and hope, the light resolved itself into a sign. The sign that had stood at the entrance of Silent Hollow, but its cheerful welcome had been replaced with a chilling message scrawled in what seemed like blood. You should have left before dark. Despair settled over the travelers like a shroud, wrapping them in a suffocating blanket of hopelessness. Each face told a story of exhaustion and fear, their eyes reflecting the dim light that barely pierced the oppressive darkness. They were trapped, lost in a void with no discernible way out. The dense fog and the dark wilderness seemed to stretch endlessly, swallowing their cries for help and leaving them in a state of perpetual confusion. They tried to retrace their steps, desperate to find their way back to the point where the town had vanished. Every path they took seemed to lead them deeper into the unknown, their confusion growing with each futile attempt. But their efforts were futile. The landscape offered no clues, no signs of familiarity. Frustration turned to despair as they realized the gravity of their situation. The darkness offered no landmarks, no reference points, only the echo of their own fear. The pitch-black surroundings seemed to mock their every move, amplifying their sense of isolation. Days turned into nights, or perhaps it was the other way around. Time had become a blur. The endless cycle of darkness and dim light made it impossible to distinguish one from the other. Time had lost all meaning in this desolate expanse. The travelers could no longer tell how long they had been wandering, their internal clocks shattered by the relentless void. The travelers, their initial terror giving way to a dull sense of hopelessness, huddled together for warmth and comfort. In the cold, empty space, the only solace they found was in each other's presence. Their supplies dwindled with each passing moment, the once plentiful resources now reduced to mere scraps. Each meal was a painful reminder of their dire situation. Hunger gnawed at their bellies, a constant, unrelenting ache that sapped their strength and willpower. The travelers grew weaker with each passing day, their bodies betraying their desperate need for sustenance. But it was the thirst, the insatiable thirst, that tortured them the most. Parched lips and dry mouths became a common sight, the desperate need for water overshadowing all other concerns. The travelers' suffering was palpable, their hope dwindling with each passing moment. They had long since abandoned hope of rescue, their cries for help swallowed by the oppressive silence. They were adrift in an ocean of nothingness, their sanity slowly unraveling with each passing moment. The void, it seemed, was not merely a place of absence, but a conscious entity, a malevolent being that fed on their fear and despair. They saw things in the darkness, flickering shapes and whispers that played tricks on their exhausted minds. The line between reality and hallucination blurred. They began to turn on each other, their fear manifesting as suspicion and paranoia. The void, it seemed, had begun its work, slowly dismantling their humanity piece by piece. Time, once a constant, a reliable measure of their existence, had become their tormentor. Each tick of the silent clock, every beat of their hearts, served only as a reminder of their dwindling time. They were trapped in a loop, a repeating nightmare from which there was no escape. The message on the sign haunted their waking thoughts and plagued their dreams. "You should have left before dark." The words echoed in the silent void, a constant reminder of their fatal mistake. If only they had heeded the warnings, the unspoken dread that had settled upon them as they entered Silent Hollow. Whispers of a legend, heard in hushed tones during their travels, now returned to taunt them. The legend of Silent Hollow, a town that existed between worlds, a place that appeared and disappeared with the setting sun, a place where time held no sway, and those foolish enough to remain after dark were condemned to a fate worse than death. Was it possible? Could this void be the space between worlds, a dimension where time and reality were but playthings of some unseen force? Were they destined to wander this desolate realm for eternity, or worse, would Silent Hollow reappear elsewhere, leaving them stranded in this terrifying in-between? Then, one day, as they huddled together, their bodies racked with exhaustion and despair, they saw it. A faint glimmer that pierced through the oppressive darkness, catching their weary eyes. It was so small, so distant, that at first they thought it was a trick of their tired minds, a flicker of light in the distance. Hope, once a distant ember, rekindled in their hearts. The light was a beacon, a promise of something better, something beyond the endless night they had been trapped in for so long. They stumbled towards the light, their weary limbs fueled by a surge of adrenaline. Each step was a struggle, but the promise of salvation kept them moving. The light grew brighter, more defined as they drew closer. As they drew closer, the light resolved itself into the familiar shape of Silent Hollow. The town they had heard of in whispers, a place of refuge and safety. It seemed almost too good to be true. The town square, bathed in the warm glow of the setting sun, seemed to beckon them. The golden light cast long shadows, creating an almost magical atmosphere. It was a stark contrast to the darkness they had left behind. Could it be their salvation, or was it another cruel trick, a mirage designed to shatter their already fragile sanity? The town looked peaceful, yet there was an unsettling feeling that lingered in the air. The travelers, their eyes fixed on the distant town, stumbled forward, driven by a desperate hope and the chilling knowledge that in this place, nothing was as it seemed. They had to find out if Silent Hollow was the sanctuary they had been searching for, or if it held more dangers than the darkness they had escaped.